Guzman. Now, the interesting thing about this case is that it was pretty much unknown to the majority of us at the time when it actually occurred, which was in 2013. But for some reason, near the end of 2020, somebody got a hold of it on TikTok and turned it into a huge trend. So, here's the thing. Isabella Guzman had been convicted of murdering her own mother back in 2013, as I said. And for anyone who has seen any of the court footage, you would see that she looked extremely unusual for a person who was being convicted of a murder. She was smiling, she was laughing, she was making faces at the camera. And did not look at all remorseful or even upset about what was happening to her, you know, wearing an orange jumpsuit and all. So people started taking, footage of her, putting it alongside footage of themselves dressed like her, and making the same motions as she was making, and then adding background music, which was Sweet But Psycho by Ava Max. And they were posting those sorts of videos all over TikTok. And that's how she became known. I mean, when I first heard about her, I thought she was a TikToker. She is not a TikToker. I was thinking, how is this girl in prison a TikToker? No, that's not the case. She has nothing to do with it. People are just taking her footage, adding their own, and making TikToks, and going viral with it. So, I'm going to tell you the whole story in a minute, but that's an important part to note. And the thing is, a lot of times, people lose sight of the truth behind something. And what I'm saying is that here is a girl who murdered somebody, and you want to go ahead and look like her and act like her and put it on TikTok. Why would you do that? And do you think for a second that it's funny that her mother was killed by her own daughter? I'm one who doesn't try to take life too seriously, but murder is serious, and we have to remember that there are real people behind these stories, and this isn't even one that is so old that we can't relate to it. This just happened in 2013. So, let's go ahead and talk about the entire case. Although, I do want to mention there is actually not a lot of really good information out there. I'm thinking because they did not have a full trial with a jury, I'm thinking that's why there's not that much info. The case is not even on Wikipedia. There's lots of garbage type articles that are just filled with things that are completely false, things that seem to be written by children, So I got whatever information I could very strict. And if you want to leave the religion, it is a big deal. So when Isabella was 14, she didn't want anything to do with that religion anymore, and she told her parents, "I'm done with it." And I do not know exactly how that was treated or how anyone acted about it, but I can imagine that was a huge source of a problem there, but nobody talks about it anywhere. So, anyway, her behavior throughout her teen years was considered rebellious. She did drop out of high school, never got a diploma. She was having a lot of issues with boyfriends, sneaking into the house and then sneaking out of the house and jumping over the fence and running away. And I believe even a neighbor spotted it and told the mother. So they fought about that a bit, as you can imagine. And their fights were just getting really out of hand. And it just seemed like she was on the verge of something violent. She had been known to spit at her mother and had kicked her mother. And her mother was getting very nervous and afraid of Isabella. There was a boyfriend who spoke after the whole incident went down, and he said that one day she just started acting, unlike herself, just completely nuts, chasing him through the yard with a golf club and screaming at him that Sam hates him. And he said he does not know any Sam, and he's pretty sure that Isabella doesn't know Sam either. And right around that same time, she had a really bad fight with her mother. and she sat down and ate it. And Ryan, her new husband, he sat down and ate it. And when she was finished, she said, "I'm gonna go take a shower." And she went upstairs while Ryan continued to eat his McDonald's meal. And while he was eating, he heard a loud thud and some screaming. So he ran upstairs just in time to see Isabella slamming the bathroom door in his face and locking it, and then just a lot of yelling and screaming. And now let's just stop here for a second and let's say, why didn't he break the door down? Okay, I am not blaming him. I am just bringing up this question because I have heard it before. I wouldn't have thought it myself, quite honestly. But people have said, why didn't he break down the door? What he did do was he turned around, he went downstairs, he got the phone, and he called 911 and told them what was happening. And then he went back upstairs, still on the phone, and he saw blood oozing out the bottom of the bathroom door. And moments later, the door swings open. Isabella walks out, covered in blood. She was holding a knife, holding it down. She didn't look at him. She did not talk to him. She just had a blank expression. She walked right past him and right out of the house into her car and drove away. Meanwhile, in the bathroom is his wife, Yoon-mi, laying in all of her blood. He's still on the phone with 911, and they are telling him to try CPR. You know, do some chest compressions, blow into her mouth. And he's saying she has no look in her eyes. You know, she has a blank look in her eyes. Like, you can I'm speechless. So, then they had to find her because she had took off. And just completely unconnected to the case, somebody called in a report that they saw a dead body in a car in a parking lot. So the police went to see, and there was no dead body. When they got there, there was nobody in the car. But when they opened the car, they did see blood, and they realized that it belonged to, the Guzman family, or the Guzman slash Hoy family, the car. And they just took a little walk around the parking garage, and they were able to find Isabella easily. She was still covered in blood. And she went with them without a problem. Now, first thing they did was bring her to the hospital because they just wanted to get her cleaned up and see if she had any injuries. And she did have some wounds to her hands, which appeared to have been done by her own knife. Maybe she slipped, cut her own hands, so she did need a few stitches. And then they brought her right over to, the jail, police station, or whatever, wherever they bring you in the beginning, where she obviously met with a psychiatrist. And it was found that she was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and that she had been for years, undiagnosed, untreated, unmedicated. She was hearing voices. She was seeing things. She had just delusions. She talked of a woman named Cecilia. That was who she believed her mother to be. Her mother was not her mother. Her mother was named Cecilia. And she had been instructed that she had to kill Cecilia in order to save the world. And, we all know people would try to make up these things to get out of trouble, but this is not that situation. This girl was seriously ill, okay? Seriously ill. She was not in her right mind. And she was the perfect definition of legally insane. Like every person who gets in trouble wants to say they were insane, they didn't know what they were doing, they have a mental illness, it wasn't their fault. But this is the case where that actually is true, She didn't know right from wrong. She didn't know what was real and what was fake. And that's why this happened, and it is a horrible, horrible tragedy if you think about it. But it's just like, this is how serious mental illness can be. And I'm not gonna say if only they had gotten her help. I'm just not gonna say that because it doesn't need to be said, and hindsight is 20/20 and all that. But interestingly enough, there was no argument between, the judge, between the prosecution and the defense. Everyone agreed that she would be eligible for a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. So she was sentenced to an indeterminate amount of time at the state psychiatric institution, where she would be evaluated granted permission